You're listening to the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the place where you, as a dad, will gain more tools for your fathering toolbox, and where moms and daughters are also invited to listen into the conversation. Now, here is your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.
Hello and welcome to the Dad Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. And because my passion is to help you as dads become heroes, not only the hero you want to be, but that your daughter needs you to be, it is my joy every week to bring you relevant topics that support that goal. And so many of you have said, you know what, Dr. Michelle? The things you're teaching me about how to relate to my daughter are also applying to my relationship with my sons. And I go, rock on, Daddy-O. This is all about you being an engaged father. And if that's what you're about, then I invite you to listen in today. Well, you know the grid every week that guides the conversation. On your mark, get set, go. So, Dad, picture yourself standing by other dads who have the same goal as you to be a great dad. And I'm on the sidelines as your coach, cheering you on and saying, on your mark, get set, go. On your mark is the topic or the theme. Get set, filling that in with stories and stats. And go is always your action step so that you can put your love for your daughter and your son into action this week. Well, today my guest coach is joining me right here in Nashville, Tennessee, where both of us are at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention, which means you're going to hear a lot of noise around us today. There's a lot of other conversations from people just like us that care about relationships. And so in case you're thinking, what is that I'm hearing in the background? Now you know. So Eric Eichinger is a guy that I've come to know in the past few weeks. We've talked and we've prepared for this interview, and you are going to love his heart. He's a pastor, a husband, a father, an author, and a running enthusiast who coaches his daughter in the sport that he loves. Eric's first book was called The Final Race, and it's been inspired by his own personal and running hero, Eric Liddell, who I love because you know, who doesn't love chariots of fire? When you run, you feel God's pleasure. I have quoted that one so many times through my life, often with saying when I sing or when I lead worship, or now that I'm not doing that anymore. But I love that phrase about when we are doing something God has called us to do, we feel his pleasure. And so that just happens to be Eric's hero as well. And so we bonded over that. So you will love hearing today about this dad who's invested in his daughter's life, and he's going to be talking today too about a book that he's recently released called Lord of Legends. So as we talk not only about his love of running, but we're going to also be talking about his love for God, his love for life, and his love for teaching her the things he knows. So Eric and his wife, Kara, have two sons and one 13-year-old daughter. Oh, I love dads with teenage daughters because it means they are in the thick of things. Oh, yeah. They're not going to gloss over anything. You're going to get the real and the raw. They live in Florida and soon will be calling LA home. Welcome, Eric Eichinger.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here.
Okay, you have got to spell your name because you've had to train me how to say it. I would have said Eichinger, but it's so that people can find you on your website. Tell them how to spell your name.
Eichinger is not bad. It's kind of some of my family actually does pronounce it that way, but we'll say Eichinger. So Eichinger. So,
yeah, there you go. So if you want to find him, he's at Eric EICHINGER.com. Okay, there you go. So he is here ready to talk about, on your mark, techniques for coaching a daughter through life, because he's going to take principles that he's learned through his running career, and we're going to be applying them to how he not only invests in his daughter's life, but ways that you as dads can learn from him. It's kind of like you're the coach to the coaches to the coach, you know, like right. You're all sharing ideas and passing it on.
Exactly.
And so you're the coach here today for these dads.
Awesome.
Okay, well, get set. Here's my first question for you, Eric.
Okay.
So again, we had fun preparing for this conversation, which means on the front end, I read some things about you, and I want to read a quote that you said and then let you comment on it. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
So you said, I was never very popular growing up, and my escape was comics. My dad, this is why this stood out to me because you were talking about your dad. My dad would drive me to the Chicago Comic Convention where I met and had comics signed by many of my comic artist and writer heroes, notably Stan Lee. Okay, can I just say, I love the fact that your dad spent time supporting what you loved.
Yes.
I just want to say that right there. Okay, my little added comment. You went on to say, when my father commented to Mickey Spillane, who I have no idea who that is,
Right.
a crime novelist, you said,
Yeah.
that I might be a writer one day as well. A person behind us in line laughed and rolled his eyes.
That's right.
But then here's what you said. Do you remember your words? That lit a fire in me. That is a powerful phrase that I want us to come back to. Kind of
Okay.
that Eric Little, like you're running,
Yeah,
you got a
yeah.
fire. And you said, and that fire spread quickly, as it was around that same time when I discovered that I could run, which you said taught you how to set your mind and focus very deliberately, because when you do that, you said you are capable of big things. Okay, so I just want to first start by asking you about your dad and how he cheered you on. And really, maybe, was he ever a coach to you? Or was he more just supportive of what you love?
Well, I got some fun stories for you I think you're going to enjoy. Just a little snapshot about my dad. So he was at Michigan State University. That's where he met my mother. And Vietnam is kicking up, but he wanted to finish, and he got a psychology degree, and then he finished, and he enlisted, so he didn't wait to get drafted, and so and then he was a medic over there, and got a Purple Heart and stuff. So he's raising his family, and he's got a psychology degree, but he's got all of this life experience and everything, and so just very intentional about, like you said, he took interest in what I had because his father did not, and so. So he was kind of correcting what he wanted in his own life and pouring it into mine and my sisters. And so whatever I was interested in, he was always looking to create opportunities to develop that, or he would be reading up and studying on that. And I didn't realize he was doing it until I became an ordained minister in the Lutheran Church, and then he starts asking me questions about politics in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, and then I'm like, and he knew he was well-versed in it, and I'm like, wait a minute, and so I realized he's been doing this my whole life. So one of those early examples was going to the comic book convention, so we did that a couple of times, and that was my interest, and so so Mickey Spillane, he was geeking out over this big crime novel. I had no idea who he was, but he wanted, he didn't know all my fans, and he was introducing me to one of his, and that's when that scenario played out. So.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we honor your dad today just by starting out
Thank
this
you.
conversation about you as a dad by honoring your dad.
Yes.
Okay, so now this topic about techniques, right? With really, I would say, investing in your daughter's life by coaching her now and in the past and in years to come. So how about if you just now take us to kind of your love of running? What's that story, and how has that been passed on to your daughter?
So I didn't excel at a lot of the other sports, but what I was good at was running, and so I kind of realized pretty quickly that I was one of the fastest kids in junior high, and then this is a great motivation story too. Then I didn't want to run in high school because like football and basketball, that's cooler.
Right.
But my dad threatened to melt down my G.I. Joe toys on the grill if I didn't go out for the cross country team. And so,
Go Dad!
so that was a great motivator for me, and everything. So anyway, so I was one of the fastest in my high school, on my team in the city, and then I walked down to Michigan State. I eventually earned a scholarship at Michigan State, and so now coaching my daughter, now it's my turn, and so it's just my wife. She played volleyball in college, and I played, I ran track, and so we were kind of waiting to see what our kids are going to do and what they're interested in. So we got to do both. Elsie did. Elsie's my daughter, and so she's not the fire spirit athlete that her mom and I are, and so we're just trying to let's give it a go, and then but I do think she excels more in track, and so and track is such a beautiful sport because there's something for everybody. If you're lightning fast, or maybe you got endurance, or maybe you're strong, or maybe you can jump, there's just something for everybody. So it's like finding where they fit in and developing that. So I was a little nervous coaching her that first year, and again, this is middle school kind of stuff, but we all think it's the Super Bowl and the Olympics,
Good point.
when you're doing that. But So it was really fun coaching her, and I was a little nervous how she might respond. But she was actually one of unbiasedly, my better athletes in terms of how she responded to my coaching. Because parenting can go up and down and sideways any given day, but she listened to me. She encouraged her teammates. She did everything that I asked. She never complained.
Wow.
And I was really impressed. And so something along, parenting father to daughter, she had responded well in that environment. And so at the end, with the sports awards, I came up with the Chariots of Fire Eric Little Award, which is kind of that exuding that type of a faithful, honorable lifestyle, and she won it. She won it, and so I got to present that to her in front of everybody.
Oh, that's cool.
And my book was out at the time, The Final Race with Tyndale House, and that's Eric Little's biography about that. So that was kind of the premise for that. But she lived up to that, and it was really fun watching her do that.
That is so cool. Okay, so what have you learned? I mean, this is a packed question.
Okay.
But what have you learned, or are you still learning as you're coaching her? What are you learning about yourself? What are you learning about her?
Mm-hmm. Coaching is such a beautiful thing because I learned from my coaches over the years, a coach approaches every athlete differently because the athletes are different. And so some of them you got to really do deep psychosis on and get into their mind. Some of them will just do everything, and some of them you got to yell at and all this kind of stuff. So it's who are we working with? So a lot of it is kind of figuring out what works and how they respond, and so you try different tactics and see how they do that. So with Elsie, her mind is a lot like mine. So I always did well with positive reinforcement from my coaches, support and encouragement. Where some of the other guys on my team were getting barked at and yelled at, but he knew if he worked with me that way. And Elsie's very similar thinker of how I am, and so just that constant positive motivation with her. I don't have to scream at her, all this kind of stuff on the sports field, So.
You know what I never thought about till you just said it, because I was never an athlete. I was always on that music drama side of what I did in school and where I spent my time. But most men listening, I would imagine, have had a coach at some point in their life, whether it was Little League, whether it was school sports or club sports, right? That there's some probably experience in their life that they could draw on with coaching. Which really seems like it's a natural bridge to being a father, where you just said, you're right, no coach coaches every kid on the team the same.
Right.
And I wonder if men could draw on that more than maybe they've thought of, is approaching every one of their kids different.
Exactly.
And finding what they are good at, like in track and field, and pushing them toward their bent rather than trying to kind of maybe cross-contaminate and put them somewhere else. But I imagine you've thought of that parallel.
I have. I'm a Lutheran pastor, and so Lutherans tend to frame our theology in law and gospel, and you always need to have both. And so God's perfect standard, but then there is the gospel of grace and everything that Jesus does for us and stuff. And so it's kind of spiritual triage. And so if it's the coaching the athlete or coaching the student or coaching the daughter or life decisions or whatever, and figuring out, is the best moment here to kind of bark at them. Sometimes you got to do a little more than whisper at your daughter's dads.
You're right. Yeah.
But then other times you need to, where you'd want to be upset, mad, and reactive, to be more understanding and show grace. And sometimes that's the better response in the moment. So you have to stay connected daily, weekly with your daughters, talking with them and getting to know them and where they are, because they're growing and learning through life, just as everybody is. And these are delicate years when they're growing up. And so sometimes, they need a little law. They need a little sternness, and other times they need that comfort and understanding and grace and that spiritual triage of trying to decide and determine in those moments what's the best to apply.
Which may mean some of the times you need to listen to your wife or maybe an ex-wife of, hey, coach,
right?
I think she doesn't need that today.
Right, exactly.
Because you haven't heard the story I've already heard from her.
Exactly, yeah. There's background, there's context, and there's, extenuating circumstances. And
which you're going to use all the time as a coach.
Sure,
You're always thinking, how do I up their game?
Yeah,
but
there's
I wonder
game changer situations.
Yes, if dads always apply that. So if you were to boil that down then to a starting technique, if you will, for a dad to coach his daughter, it sounds like you're saying it's really to tune into where she's at, pace with her. You're going to have some loss, some grace.
Right.
And keep that in mind.
Exactly.
Good technique. Dad to daughter, coach to
exactly. And
to athlete.
you've got to be in tune with your daughter. You can't just kind of mentally check out and like hope, oh, the school, they're doing fine and they're teaching my kids, or drop them off and assume that things are going well. You need to be actively talking with them daily to kind of know where their psyche is and confidence and or lack of and all these areas.
Yeah, which again goes back to this whole idea of coaching, because I think of how many people I've heard tell the story of their coach having a vital impact in their development and in their life. And sometimes the coach is the one advocating at school for them so they can stay on the team because their grades are dropping. And so sometimes I imagine that coaching hat as a father means advocating for her.
Exactly.
Where she needs you to help her do something that's hard alongside her. Or, I mean, there's so many metaphors here.
There really are.
To fathering.
Yes, exactly.
Which, again, you and I are both very excited about and passionate about. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And when we come back, I want to ask you about more techniques that you've come up with, seen that are effective with your daughter when we're calling it coaching your daughter. So we're going to take a break and be right back.
Are you a dad who has ever desired a deeper connection with your daughter, but haven't known how to go about it? Let's Talk Conversation Starters for Dads and Daughters is the very resource you need. Dr. Michelle wrote it with you dads in mind. This book will support you with scripted questions, equip you to decode your daughter, and inspire you with stories of other dads and daughters. Don't wait any longer to be the hero you want to be and that your daughter needs you to be. So, to let the talking begin, head on over to drmichellewatson.com/books and order your copy today. This book will become a favorite in your fathering toolbox and will give you the answers you've been looking for. That's drmichellewatson.com/books. Now, back to the Dad Whisperer podcast.
Welcome back. I'm Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the Dad Whisperer, talking here to Eric Eichinger. And we are talking about techniques that a dad can use to coach his daughter through life, because there are so many metaphors and parallels between coaching and fathering. So, okay, Eric, let's keep getting practical, because I love giving dads action-oriented steps to connect with their kids. So this idea of coaching and your daughter in track and field, talk more about how you bring home some of these techniques in real life. Like, can I hear any of your, quote, coaching blunders?
Sure.
Any things that you've maybe learned the hard way?
Well, I'm sure I'm the only person in the world that has a daughter that slams a door in the house from time to time. Maybe there's one other dad out there that can relate to that. Yeah. So this was becoming a growing issue in our house for a while. And so finally, we experimented with the threats of just, minor penalties or this and that, or like we need
your
to
phone's
change
taken away,
a stern talking to, all these kinds of things, and so finally it got to the head and I did the classic dad move of taking the door off the hinges when she was away at school. And so she came home, and then I wrote this letter and I taped it to the frame of the door, and so she came out.
What'd you say in the letter?
Well, it was about doors are privileges in this household, and stuff, and you've lost that privilege, and attitude and all these types of things and stuff. And so we're going to be working on that. But I didn't want to make because the question was like, you want to see this repentant spirit. You want to see an apology, but I didn't want to make it this work your way back into my grace kind of a thing. We genuinely wanted to see a change in attitude.
Yeah,
and
at
spirit.
A heart level.
Exactly.
Not just behavior.
Tell your brother you're sorry. Oh, yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
We've all been there. So to see this genuine thing. So I didn't put a timeline in it, and I didn't make it a works righteousness type of a thing. So it stayed off for a couple months, and we go through the phases of, well, I don't care that it's all right, sure, right, this kind of stuff, privacy and everything. But eventually, she had her attitude was changing. She was growing, and then she had a particular victory in school or with relationships with some of her friends, or something. She did something that was much more notably mature than what we had observed, and so we surprised her, and we had put the door back on again when she was coming home from school, and it was just kind of like, okay, we're at a reset now. So that's one.
That's cool, because again, I just am getting all these like aha moments as you're talking, Eric, because a coach will have consequences if his athlete is late to practice every day.
Sit on the bench.
You sit on the bench.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to shame them there, right?
Right.
What are you trying to do?
Well, if you want them to respond to the coach, you want them to do what
Yeah.
you're telling them to do for the victory, for the better thing, And so
Personal
it's like,
victory and team victory.
well, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so the growth, the team unity, all this kind of stuff. And so I sometimes talk about how our family is a team, and we all have different roles and abilities.
Oh,
and
that's
it's like,
cool.
one person, if we want to use basketball or football, one's the quarterback, one's the point guard, one's this, that, the other thing. And it's like, what's your role?
Yeah.
And if you have a poor sport and a sour puss attitude, it brings the morale of the team,
down.
and everything like that. But when you're doing that, and
That's cool.
so those types of things. So
Okay, you
Yeah.
told me another story about a
Yeah.
cell phone. I
Okay.
want to hear this one because this is about helping dads take on a coaching mentality
Right,
of
exactly.
shaping their young athlete, we'll call her.
So the goal of parenting, correct me if I'm wrong, is to raise independent, functioning adults in society.
I
Yes,
would
you know.
hope that's the goal. Something close
Well,
to that.
There's a lot of the helicopter parents and stuff. It has baffled me how quickly parents give cell phones to their kids. And so my daughter, she's 13. Guys, she does not have her own cell phone. And so this is
Does
controversial.
she feel like is she really marginalized by her friends? The only one.
It's been growing, but so she's 8th grade right now. But yeah, the last couple of years, more and more of her friends have been getting it. But yeah, the 7th grade, she was at our school with all these kids, and she was like one of 2 kids that didn't have the phone. But the statistics are in terms
Yes,
of what
they
the
are.
social media stuff is just, and how damaging, and their minds or brains are still developing stuff. So I made it this way, and this is where it triggered. I'm really proud of this idea because I had a 24-year-old guy in my office at the church getting ready to go to the military, and mommy was still paying his cell phone bill, and it was just like because they make the companies, they make these plans all so I did an about face with because we've been talking about how are we going to do this eventually, so I wanted to make it like a car payment, it's like getting your own phone is like you earn your money, you save up, and then you buy your phone, and guess what? There's monthly payments that come with that too, and you got to shop around and do these types of things. So I had this big conversation with Elsie, and I kind of painted that picture, and then the next day she said, how much does an iPhone cost? And I said, you know what? That's probably the most brilliant question you've ever asked. Let's see.
Yeah.
If there's no cost, there's no value. If you just give your kids everything, so to make them start thinking about what do I really value? How bad do I really want this? How do I work for that, plan for that? How do I care for it? And all these things.
Research.
And if you just give your kids this, not only does it damage them, I think, socially and addiction and all these types of things, but you're not teaching them how to go out and get something and care for it and develop it and everything. So, yeah.
Oh, I love that too, because you are really saying to dads, think about coaching your daughters. If maybe, you're not saying this, I may be putting words in your mouth, but I wonder how many dads, if they've been scarred by their father or the word father. I mean, I know a lot of women that is not a positive word.
Yeah.
And not that, I'm a champion of fathers. I'm not trying to ever replace that word, but I wonder if dads had a mindset of coaching their daughter instead of fathering their daughter, if it would awaken something familiar in them that they already know to draw on to shape how they relate to their daughter and their son.
Exactly, because oftentimes we'll look at other dads, and that can be unhealthy sometimes because we get into this comparison and who's better. Yeah, well, they have this, they have that. But when guys, we tend to respect other coaches, and there's certain coaches that we admire and their style and how they do things. And so to kind of say like, well, why are they so successful, and what's their approach? And so, and just, some of those tools we can use and techniques they cross over into other platforms,
I love that.
academics and life and all sorts of things.
Exactly.
Even faith.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, even faith. Well, On Your Mark today has been techniques for coaching a daughter through life. I've been talking with Eric Eichinger. He's brought some of his own creative ideas to parenting that relate to how he's learned to be disciplined and have a mindset that says, I want to go the distance. And he's applied those to the way that he coaches his daughter on the field and in life. I trust that his message will be an encouragement to you as dads too. Well, as always, you can go to my website, drmichellewatson.com, and find free resources. You can also go to Eric's website, which is
ericeichinger.com.
There you go.
EICHINGER.
There you go. And remember, you can subscribe to the Dad Whisperer podcast on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify or Stitcher. And there you can listen back to any of the past shows and share them with your friends. Well, this wraps up another week's program. It's been great to be here with you all. I'm Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the Dad Whisperer, signing off and encouraging you to make today a day where you intentionally and consistently invest in pursuing your daughter's hearts. Go Dads.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. We trust you've been encouraged by today's program, where you've been equipped with practical action steps to strengthen your relationships. Dr. Michelle loves hearing from you, so why not write her at drmichelle@thedadwhisperer.com. As always, you can listen to the Dad Whisperer podcast anytime on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Give a listen, subscribe, and leave us a review. For free resources or to invite Dr. Michelle to speak at your next event, go to drmichellewatson.com for more information. That's drmichellewatson.com. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to you joining us again on the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.